So continuing with our valuation, the second part that I wanted you all to add to your model is basically a, a note on profitability. Now, Nike is already, we already know Nike's numbers, and what I did was I went to, I believe this is Market Watch, that where these numbers are available. So it's actually in a very good format as well, on where they kind of show you a breakout and the growth, and it's a very nice thing. So if you look up your company here, I think it could be very nice. So what we want to look at is basically predicting the growth rather than taking it for granted, and the earnings growth, which we saw is really driving our model. The earnings growth is really generating 72% of our valuation here. So what I'm asking is, like, is this number correct? Where is this number coming from? And that's the key to really know a stock's value, even if you're gonna reverse engineer it as we did. And if you dramatically disagree with the market right now, it's definitely, the whole work is figuring out by how much is that growth off. Maybe the market is missing it completely. So in order to figure that out, we need to look a little bit deeper into the company, and we have the sales data and we have the sales growth. So we can see here, for example, I created like 3 models of where this is going to kind of look at 3 scenarios. So first scenario, the sales are growing at 5%, and essentially the margins are improving as they have been by about percent or 0.5% a year, and then flattening out, assuming they've reached their maximum efficiency in terms of margins. And then I'm getting this income growth per year. And this is something that in the immediate future is high, but then I could see it tapering off, and that's kind of where our growth has been, around 5. So I think this is kind of like the model that the market is using for predicting the income growth. Now, for another scenario that I call high, and I created 3 valuations. So I want you guys to do is just basically make 3 duplicates in a way of your mod, two more than what you have now, and have a higher and a max valuation. We'll go on the optimistic side and basically look at 3 different models. In this next one, what I have is a growth of 6%. So I'm basically saying, hey, sales are growing at 6%. What would make that happen? I could say, hey, this just means that Nike is expanding further overseas, increasing their market share, and they're increasing the market size by selling in more developing nations, basically. So this could be, hey, this is where they're going, increasing their market size and share. I kept the profit margin the same. And here I see high earnings growth tapering off at 6%, and that's what I used for my high valuation. And then I could see that I get $65 per share for the value, and it's actually $15 more than the market. So that's basically saying, if I'm right, and Nike does start proving out this story over the next couple years, I can make a lot of money, specifically $15 a share, which is not a bad return for a couple of years. That could be 30% or something like that, around 28, 35, 32% of a return if I nail that, if that story will pan out. Of course, it depends. The third story, I have seeing margins improving with 6% sales growth, seeing margins improving and actually continuing to increase. And this creates a very high growth number. So I said the max, you know what, I'll go, even though this is very high, I'll stay conservative and say 7%. And then in that case, the story is that it will be $41 more. It's $91. The reason why, it's less likely is because how could Nike continue every year to increase their profitability by 1%. This takes more than sales growth. That would take an extra percent almost of increasing profit margin every year. And that will be, of course, very hard to sustain for a large company like that. So this is the main story that I want you guys to flesh out for your company, to start really understanding a little bit more where the earnings growth is coming from. And then the last piece that I want you to add is a little bit of background on the company itself, of how it's looking to achieve its profit margin, the profitability, or in your case, if the sales are actually providing most of the growth in earnings, how are they, what is the write-up in regards to sales? In my company, Nike, it's actually mostly coming from profitability. I think the sales have been around 6%. It's pretty fixed. So I'm focusing on profitability. But if it's for you as sales, then please use that write-up in your research. So four reasons Nike has such high profit margin is essentially they have their pricing power, which we know Nike shoes basically are delivering an innovative product. They're very high quality, and they're able to have incredible branding, and that commands high pricing power. Manufacturing efficiencies that are happening there right now is that they're using this new Flyknit footwear technology, where it's actually more like 3D printing rather than labor-intensive stitching. And this is essentially reducing labor costs by 50% per unit and material usage by up to 20% per unit. So this is essentially a technological development that is allowing them to make these shoes for much less money, which will improve profit margins dramatically. And that's where, but this may take a while. So this is where my high-end story goes in and says, hey, if this really kicks in and continues to reduce costs by 1% of sales a year, we can basically get to that continuous improvement of 1% profit margin per year, which hits the max valuation numbers. That's essentially the story. There's a little bit more here with tax minimization and direct sales. But these are the main points of how this profitability story is really panning out. And in your valuation, just simply insert in the three scenarios the different growth numbers and update them to match whatever you're researching based on forecasts or analysis or what people are saying. And feel free to dive into a little bit of the technology or the supply chain or whatever it is that's driving the profitability of your company.